Hey, everybody. Welcome back from whatever you're doing, wherever you're at, to the Sound Horizons podcast, brought to you by TuneTrack. Hey, I'm Rick, and I'm here again, which means I had nothing better to do. Or you're that important. Maybe a little of both, maybe neither. It could, who knows? The point is, we're all here. We might as well do something productive. And today's productive activity is going to be talking to what I like to consider a living legend, a scholar, a gentleman, a hero, possibly a superhero, alter ego style. I don't know. We'll delve into that. My point is you're going to love today's podcast like you love all the podcasts, but if you love this one just a little bit more because of our guest, we won't hold it against you. Ladies and gentlemen, the man, the myth, the legend, and possible superhero, Mr. Mark Lewis, ladies and gentlemen. Dun, dun, dun.
Wow.
I know.
What an intro. Let's just end it there before I, ruin this whole thing.
Look, the most important question that everyone has for you right now is, do you skip leg day? That's what I want to know. Do you skip leg day or do you like leg day?
2 leg days a week, man.
What? Come on.
Yep.
Is that what you're saying for the podcast, or is that verifiable? That's livable.
No,
You're
I
doing
swear
legs.
to God, dude. I mean, look, I'm 6'3", and if I don't eat or weight train, I would walk around at about 175, 180 pounds. And now I hover anywhere between 220 to 250, depending on my ambitions.
Yes.
And I have naturally skinny legs, and I used to always get clowned about it, and I still get clowned about my calf size, even though I train those hard too. But dude, I have made leg training my mission. But dude, I mean, obviously,
you make me feel bad because if my mind is like, hey, we should skip leg day, I'm like, you know what, mind? You're totally right. I'm not running from cheetahs or tigers anymore. We can skip leg day and then just go and work on your triceps for a while, or do some the cool stuff, the stuff that everyone notices. But you're a mensch.
Well, dude,
you do it for real.
I'm gifted in the tit area, so those just grow if I look at a weight. So I don't even really train chest anymore. Now I just train like shoulders and legs and back and stuff, and
All right, but here's a question. So you are an expat. You're in Nashville now. You're coming to us live from Nashville, but for many years you lived in Florida. Is there a difference in the gym scene in Florida versus Nashville? Is that a different experience?
Big time.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Is Florida as crazy as I think it is? Just like all muscle beach, all like beach
Florida's
body.
Florida's way more fit. I mean, but 5 o'clock at the gym here in town, 5 to 8 p.m., which I don't really hit anymore, is absolutely the fucking nightclub. Fucking everybody's got their tripod and
nice.
trying to be cool and shit. So I go to like a little 24-hour gym near the studio at like 5 in the morning now, or 6 in the morning. So I don't have to deal with any of that.
Smart.
Plus, it's the only time I'll ever get a workout in if I don't go. Because, once the kids are home from school and my littlest one is home, he usually goes to his grandparents for the day. Once they're home, it's not like I'm going to go to the gym, like I want to hang out with the kids and hopefully eat before I become an angry, hungry, hangry jerk,
Nice.
So
are you 5 days a week, 7 days a week? What do you, every day, 4 days, varied up?
5 days a week now, usually with the weights. But I mean, nowadays, like I always try to be more active because, as you know, this is like the most sedentary job in the history of man.
Correct.
Unless you're like miking drums or, moving mics on a guitar cabinet, which Dynamount is determined to make into a more sedentary position, which they are doing a great job at because those things rule. But yeah, man, I try to lift 5 days a week if I can, and then I'm walking somewhere, walking a mile or two a day.
Let me ask you a controversial question. You talk about the sedimentary part. So you mix a lot of records, as we're going to talk about. Have you ever considered, or do you have any thoughts on people that use the raised desks, like that mix, that are in our line of business, that work in audio, and they have sort of that sit to stand desk, and then they try and mix or do that sort of thing standing? Have you ever thought about that as an option? Has that ever been appealing to you, or are you just good sitting for a few hours and taking a break?
Dude, the prospect of a desk that moves is something that haunts my nightmares. Like it haunts my nightmares. What is that the right way to say it? Something that haunts my dreams is a true nightmare. Anything
Yes.
that changes my listening position in a way that could affect how I'm hearing the sound is something that I would never do. But that being said, I have seen people that do things like that. And maybe if I was tracking or something and I knew
Mm.
that things were really good, maybe that would be, something that's more feasible, I guess. Sorry, I'm actually adjusting a mic gain for you guys. See, I can't not work. No, I can't imagine doing it because I need to be focused on the sonics, and
Yeah.
maybe if it was a thing where I was producing and not managing the sounds, I can't imagine that either. I could do it. But no, now I try to be really good about just getting up.
Which is
Um,
important. Yeah. Taking breaks, getting up, moving around.
if there's anything I've learned, like from my years, of making so many mistakes, it's that you have to know when to take a break and you have to know when to stop for the day and when to just walk away and come back, for a fresh perspective. Maybe you need a couple days away or something from the project,
Well, you talk about your sonics. This is a question I had for you that I've been meaning to ask. So, for as many people watching are familiar with your work, so I'm not doing a whole like deep dive in. So, when did you first discover music, and were you like? Who cares? You're a rock metal. We get it. You're fucking literal giant. We just talked about weightlifting. Now we're talking about sonics, and this is where I wanted to go. So, for years, you were working out of the Audiohammer facility in Florida. You were in Florida. You're part of that team. You're doing a thing, and you had a room.
Yeah.
You had your sonics. Like that was for you. When
Right.
you relocated to Nashville and you built the room you're in now, currently, were you
Mhm.
trying to take the sonics from that space you had in Florida all those years and replicate it there, or were you trying to create a space where you might be able to get something different or more unique than what you had?
No, it definitely was kind of a fresh start. And I will say that, look, I mean, I picked up from Florida, and Tennessee was cheap enough at the time to where I really, you know, a good thing this isn't a money podcast because I am not your guy. Like I didn't have a particularly, I didn't really have any savings. I just kind of fucking did a record and
Yes.
moved. And Tennessee was so cheap at the time that I was able to get up here and buy a place that was a big enough property and a donor enough of a shell to build this place. That being said, it took me 5 years to get this control room done. The drum room, I had done within like a year and a half or 2 years of moving, which is even much longer than I wanted. Um, so no, I started from scratch, and a guy named Roger Darcy did the designs on it, and he's incredible. He actually worked on Jason's room, but he worked on Andy Sneap's room. He's worked on, I believe, part of Abbey Road, not the George Martin design years, but later studios.
Sure.
And I mean, just Google Roger Darcy. I mean, he's to me the absolute best. I worked at a studio of his in Israel, and it fucking blew me away how good the control room sounded. The live room was just perfect. Um, and he has transformed these less than ideal spaces in my home into these magnificent sounding fucking spaces. Like my control room is not an ideal size or dimension, and he made it sound incredible. The drum room is a good size for Nashville. It's a typical size. For LA, it would be considered small
Sure.
and more of a dead room. But it's infinitely controllable and just sounds great.
So
That was the mission, was to just get up here and just kind of have an affordable space to continue making the records I want to make. And, just, it was just the next phase of my life. Cause that being said, Jason and I are still the best of friends.
of
There
course,
was
yeah.
nothing remotely weird about that. It was just time, I think he needed his own space. And look, we were looking at almost 15 years together. I was in that room for 12 years in the B room at Audiohammer. It was my studio. And it's a fucking long time.
That's a long time to
And
do anything, especially in a land where bears and alligators can coexist. That's a long time to be. That's a weird long time to be in Florida for anything at all.
that is correct. And funny enough, there's actually a bear reserve. It's like a wilderness bear. What the fuck is it called? At the end of the road near Audiohammer, there is a like a bear sanctuary. Like, I mean, we're not talking like a half a mile. We're talking like 800 feet maybe from the studio.
Which is
There's
awesome.
like a bear,
like a wildlife preserve or something. Yeah.
Yeah. And they would like
amazing.
just wander into the studio and do the trash and bust the fucking screen out of the pool area and get popcorn out of it. You know what I mean? Like it's literally what would happen.
That's fantastic. Well, so all right, so you moved to Nashville. It's the second phase of your life. So during this process, you're a smart man. This I know from personal experience. So you're in Florida. You're with Audiohammer. You're part of this team that is legend. I mean, and I mean that in the sincere. It's not a joke. It's like you guys have crafted and created as a team and as a company at the time some of the most renowned and respected metal records that are out there. And I think that's something that we should acknowledge, and you guys should all be proud of. I mean, I think it's amazing. And you had a system. You had a system, though. I mean, you were there. You had for lack of a better term, a compound. It's like, okay, well, we do things this way. And given Florida's location, sure, there's other producers and other studios in Florida, but conversely, to go from sort of being very specialized as what you guys do in Florida to coming to Nashville, where every other producer, every mixer, every engineer, every person was that a part of your process? Like, did you think that through? Like, okay, when I land there, I'm just going to be another face in the crowd. I'm going to have to compete. I'm going to have to impress. There's going to be more opportunities, but more competition. Or was that not a concern for you at all?
No, it kind of was like, this is going to be great because everybody here makes records. And the crazy thing is, man, you know, where I live just north of the city. And, you know, it's kind of becoming a heavy metal mecca. I've had a couple bands kind of record with me and they're like, we're fucking moving here. And they did. And they're like in my town, like, you know, it's like becoming like Tampa was, you know, there's a lot of newer death metal and extreme metal and just metal bands, period. There's becoming a big rock scene in Nashville. But even still, you know, number one thing about Nashville is everybody makes a fucking living. If you're decently good at anything in the music business, there is a job for you in this town. Like there's just no other way to put it. Like, can you load gear? You got a job. Can you play guitar kind of decent? You got a fucking job. Can you play guitar amazing? You have every job you ever want. You know, like it's just one of those things where like if you are remotely good at any skill involving anything that is payable in this business, you will work.
Wow.
So it's insane. I mean, it's the whole economy of this city, really, besides tourism.
Yeah.
But really, like, what I found was that it's just such a different thing. Like, I thought it was going to be great, and it was better than I even ever imagined. Because, you know, say one of my 451s breaks, you know, because you know any of my old mics from the 70s. In a half an hour, I have a replacement from Blackbird or Nashville Backline or whoever the fuck, you know, like whoever has it, and it's going to cost me, you know, $50 for the day or $30 or something. And then I can have my replacement. And then nothing ever, there's no skips in the work. But the other thing is how amazing everybody is at just helping each other. Like I moved here, I was a guy in a fucking house making metal records. I'm not open to the public. People don't know that I'm here. I don't advertise, you know. You would never know there's a studio here, you know, but I kind of just landed here, made a few friends, but really started calling places because I didn't have a drum room yet. So I said, okay, where am I going to go, you know, track drums for this record? And I would call guys and they'd be like, oh yeah, you know, like that's cool that you do metal and stuff. You know, that's fucking, you know, that's really cool. They wouldn't say fuck because a lot of those guys are super, you know, not like that. But they'd be like, oh, that's great. You know, but I will say that I think that maybe you should try this studio if you're looking for this type of sound. You know, whereas they're like, yeah, it's $700 a day or $600 a day to record. But you know what? And yes, we have the opening. But you know what? Call Pat over at Ocean Way or call call, my buddy over at Warner or whatever it is, and it's like, what? Like in LA, it's like, yeah, we can do that. Just let me know when you want to make the deposit. And then there's at no point would anybody ever recommend another studio,
No,
and it's
no.
this insanely helpful culture and just it's amazing in that way. And then, like I'll go to Avid meetings or I'll go to the PRS gatherings or things like that, and people will know my face from the tune track stuff or the STL stuff or the you know any other number of things that I may have been involved in that might be visible. And they're like, "Oh wow, like I fucking love metal. I love this record that you did." And I'm like, "But you play guitar for like Brantley Gilbert. What?" And they're like, "Dude, we fucking love metal. We love what you do." Blah blah blah. And I'm like, "Wow, this is insane." Like it became more like I felt like not only was I more visible in this town, but people are like genuinely into metal here, even if they're not making a living doing it. And it's like, like us metal guys become these unicorns at these parties. It's hilarious. Like, oh man, like I fucking love this Whitechapel record. I love that. I'm like, what? You know, and and they're just fascinated by it. Or you meet songwriters and they're like, yeah, man, I know what you do. I'd love to get your drum sounds on a track. And this is all bar talk. You know what I mean?
Right. Of course.
They're like, oh man, I would love if you could work on this Tim McGraw thing for me. It's like, that'll never happen. But people say shit like that, because they are interested in metal, and a lot of them are metalheads, which I'm finding out, which is even crazier to me.
Well, I think metal is a universal language, and as I think, especially in a town like Nashville, like you alluded to, where there isn't, but there can be this overwhelming sense of conformity to a lot of the traditions and the standards and the practices, at all the studios, and I think metal is kind of that secret. It kind of goes against everything Nashville's about, so it's kind of rebellious still there. It's fun. It's not like LA where everything's a shithole, so metal just blends in. It's like Nashville's like, oh, I listen to metal. Don't let anybody. It's like, shh, don't. It's kind of nice. So you are a unicorn, which is cool.
Yeah, yeah, I guess so, man. It's funny in that sense that people are just so fascinated by it, and yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know.
All right.
It's just nothing I ever expected to find.
Let's skip back just a couple of sentences because you were talking about a scenario where you mysteriously broke a 421, which brought up your insane microphone. You have a very, very intense relationship with microphones, and
Sure,
again, you, not that other producers don't, but I look at yours. You kind of go out of your way to go off the beaten path and use things that may not necessarily be name brands or, for instance, someone may say, "Oh, I've got a kick drum," and their go-to might be a D112 or a Beta 52. Great. And I'm not saying you don't use those. I'm saying, but your mind will automatically process, what can I find that's old and esoteric that might be able to give me the same frequency response, the same everything else, or maybe a different sound? And I was curious if that is a result of you being tired of the fact that everybody uses the same things to do the same things, or if you really are that interested in microphones as a vehicle to capture sound.
I yeah, I mean, I think I'm just more interested in kind of changing things up. But I will say that the esoteric thing really, I will say it's almost more of the dynamic mics because the condensers, I'll be honest, a lot of them are out of reach for me financially.
Sure. Yeah.
But I have a
All
good
of us.
amount of like old Sures and stuff like that were, long before they moved production to Mexico. And I feel like it's definitely different. And the same thing with the 421s. Like a lot of people don't realize that there's like 4, 5, 6, 7 different 421s out there.
Sure.
I'm not familiar with all of them, but I know the two that I'm most familiar with. One of them, being the older one from the 70s, the U5, and then the new one, which is the 421 2. And they're significantly different sounding microphones that I would use in very different situations. So I think that it really just comes down to me finding a place for them that where they fit, I guess, you know?
Yeah.
That's really all it is.
Is there a microphone in your arsenal that you'll bring out during a session that always elicits a question or gets a response where they're like, what the hell is that? Like, I've never seen that. Do you have like one in mind where you can think like most people, when you bring it out, are like, what what are you going to do with that? What's that all about?
Well, I have a little mic that I use for effects sometimes. It's an assault shaker, which is pretty cool.
That's kind of awesome.
Yeah, I can't remember that. I should give the guy more props, but it's literally an assault shaker, and it just sounds like a radio mic. Um, but no, I mean, I have like a modified, like I've modified some mics and modified some of the warm audio stuff and put like some really high end capsules in them.
Those mics are
And
amazing, by the way. I mean, props to Warm
yeah,
Audio for just off the bat. I mean, I'm sure your
yeah,
mods sound amazing, but I would think to that avail, a lot of people in town are doing the same thing you are. It's like, this is a great, I mean, just to start, it's a great mic. If I take it to, like you said, you live in a town that has, maybe a dozen guys that can turn something that's already great into something that's incredible, which is
yeah.
nice.
It's kind of insane, the techs here, man. I mean, I have some techs. I mean, that are just fucking incredible. I mean, some studio guys and some amp guys in this town that are just like next level great. And that's another thing that's different from Florida too. It's like, you like I said, the repair and the availability of the resources, of the equipment is insane. But yeah, I mean, I will say, like, I've kind of tried to stop modifying too much stuff nowadays because it's almost like you're lighting money on fire. At the same time,
Sure.
yeah, I only spent, $900 to have a mic that sounds like a $10,000
Right.
U47, but it's I'm never gonna get the money back out of it. It's like, yeah, guys, this sounds like a U47. They're like, oh, cool story, bro. And
Yeah,
no,
that's
nobody
great.
believes you. And even if you show it to them, they're like, yeah, I'll give you $500. So that's one of the things is like I did, like the first pair of 1073s I got besides the Vintex, which are great, was a pair of AML, which are basically a kit that you get offline. But it's something you hand wire on a PC board, and it is literally one to one a real Neve 1073. And I've shot him out against vintage ones. I've shot him out against BAE. They're just as fucking good. They are just as good. But at the same time, like, on the used market, they're worth 6 or 7, $800, or maybe
Yeah.
$1,000 if you're lucky. You know, whereas a BAE 1073, with the EQ, $3,000, used or whatever. And so that's the kind of the thing is like, yeah, I mean, I saved a lot of money in the beginning, and did some cool stuff and learned some neat things, but if you're trying to be smart all around, then, I guess what's the saying? Buy nice or buy twice or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
Is
That,
that what it
yeah.
is?
That is it.
But it's
Yeah.
kind of like, buy real or, you're going to get screwed, I guess, if you're not,
It's not as
if you don't have
catchy,
the
but
name.
I like that. It didn't rhyme as well. By real, or you're going
Yeah,
to get
yeah,
screwed.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I would wear that T-shirt if it makes you feel any better. That's pretty
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, maybe I'll print it out. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing about it, man, is that's where the mics came from. And also just hearing the older mics, hearing the older Unidynes and things like that, I was like, oh fuck, that is better. But I still do use the new Sures too. Like there's times when the new Shure beats out the old one or whatever. It's all just about having the different things. And sometimes I paint myself into a corner. Like I have all my 57s labeled in a folder. Like I can
Wow.
listen to how they sound on a cabinet. And sometimes like I'll spend a whole day trying to pick out a 57 when I should, you know, 10 years ago or 12 years ago, I would have just used the one that was like in the room.
Yeah. It's the one that was
And it's like,
closest.
yeah, yeah. And there's something to be said for that too, man. Like there's nothing I can really quantify. Do I sleep better at night knowing that I have exhausted all options? Yes. But sometimes you make significantly less money because you're spending 3 days or 4 days auditioning mics or, you
Well,
know,
and so let me ask you. So I've a two-part question. So the first part is you've been making and mixing metal records long enough to have seen many of the trends in the industry as far as metal goes and albums and production. Are album budgets for signed metal bands getting smaller, any bigger, or staying the same since when you started this process?
um, That's hard to say. I feel like they were dipping more for a minute. Now the money's coming back a little bit, for sure. And don't let the labels fool you. They might hate me for saying this, but the bottom line is we all agreed to work for less money. We
Mm.
did because we didn't want to quit doing this. And they may act like the money's not there, but it fucking is. It is. Streaming has saved music, and I'm not looking to get into the Spotify conversation about who's getting paid what or whatever, or what your deal is or whatever it is. But the money is there, and a lot of it depends on your deal, and a lot of it depends on your management. And that's the other thing that drives me nuts is you have, Metal Sucks or Metal Injection, and I love those guys. I know them, but they put out these articles. It's Devin Townsend or so like um uh another name. Not
Corey
just not
Taylor
just,
from Slipknot.
yeah, not exactly, not to single out Devin. Because
Yeah.
it's not, this is not me disagreeing with him, but they'll say, oh, Devin Townsend says he can't make any money on the road. Devin Townsend is making a living on the road. That's not what he's saying. He's saying it's a different, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but to me, he's saying it's a different thing. It's a different time than it was. And is it more expensive? Hell yes, everything's more expensive. But if you have the right management and you are, putting your money in the right places, there's money to be made, man. I mean, I work with a lot of bands that don't have day jobs, and or if they have day jobs, they don't need them. And that's not every band, but you know, the money is there if you manage it right, and there's money to be made, man. There really is. And
Well,
that's how I feel, and I feel like the budgets can be as good or better than they were, and sometimes it's abysmal. You're just like, fuck, I don't want to do this for this amount of money, but I love this record and I'll do it anyway.
so when you get that number though, so you get a number from a band or a label and you're going to do a record,
Mhm.
and you look at the amount of money that you have to do the record, do you start compartmentalizing in your mind from a producer standpoint how much time that dollar amount will afford you to focus on each component of the records? Meaning, do you get a number and say, okay, well, that means I can spend a couple days on drums here, a couple days on guitars for it to make sense to you? Or do you ultimately have your system regardless of the dollar amount and you just move forward the way you move forward?
Yeah, the dollar amount's not going to affect how long I spend on something, unfortunately. If I've agreed to do it, it's going to be up to my standard that I hold myself to no matter what. If I'm doing a record for $1 or $100,000, would love to do a record for $100,000, by the way. But it's going to be the same. If I've agreed to do it, I've got to do it. And I've also got to make the band happy, and that's really what it comes down to is making the artist happy, and also, feeling like I'm standing behind something that I believe in.
And this is, if you don't want to answer this, you don't have to, because I don't mean to throw anyone under the bus, but when a new band comes to start to work with you, not someone you've already worked with, a new band, a lot of
Right.
the times do they come and say, Mark, we want the Black Dahlia Murder sound or the Whitechapel guitar? Do they come to you, and because those are two pretty iconic sonic masterpieces you've worked on in the past, and they're very different sonically, but they're high gain driven, big
Mm.
energy. Are those benchmarks you hear a lot, or are any of the records you've done, like someone comes in, can we get that particular guitar or drum sound?
They used to happen more, not so much nowadays. Now it has shifted because I've been so adamant about capturing what the band wants to hear, because we will have those discussions. It used to happen more. People are like, oh, we love the sound on this record or whatever, and nowadays bands really are trying to come in with more of an identity, or they may just kind of leave it up to me. But I try to really work with bands that sonically want to sound like a specific thing. Um, and we have those discussions beforehand. How do you like to tune your snare? How do you Like, what amps do you like? Do you have a cabinet that you can't live without? Things like that. What instruments are you bringing? And what do you need from me type of thing. We really try to have um, those discussions. And it's definitely making a big difference. I mean, whereas dude, look, there's a lot of producers out there right now that are just have no regard for sonics. Like they're just like, this is my snare sample, don't even send me real drums, which is fucking mind blowing to me. Like it doesn't even make sense to me that people work like that. But I have really tried to make it a point to be the guy that people know they can come to sound how they want to sound. And it does create more, I wouldn't say inconsistencies in my catalog, but there's times when people are like, some mixes become controversial because a band will want a certain thing. Or a band will want this or that. It's not like a guy who uses the same drums on every record and the same guitar plug-in, the same whatever. It's like everything is from the ground up here. And that takes a lot of work and the results are never the same.
So do you find, because I think, again, most people know, but I'll say it for the cheap seats in case you didn't know. So you, not only are you a recording engineer and a producer, but you also do mastering as well.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find if a band or an artist asks you to do all three, is that a conflict of interest to you because no one else's ears are getting involved, or are you comfortable doing it all from beginning to end and you feel solid about it?
No, I'm comfortable with it now. I mean, it really became something that I started doing because there was times when the mastering in particular was sent to places where I just felt that the mix was compromised. And nowadays, luckily I work with bands that if they don't want me to master, they'll fork up the money to go to Sterling Sound and use Ted Jensen or somebody like that. And I mean, in my opinion, Ted is just the fucking best. I mean, that's my opinion. But I'm not going to send it to somebody, or I'm not going to just not master it if I feel like I can do a better job than the guy they want to give it a shot.
Well, that was my next question. About the master? I didn't mean to cut you off. There are some people, especially in the rock and metal world, that believe because streaming is so prevalent that mastering is no longer a necessary step, that it should just be the 2-bus mix treated the way you want, and then that's what should go out to streaming. Do you have any thoughts on that kind of ideology with hard and heavy music in particular?
Yeah, mastering's more important than ever, to be honest with you. In my opinion, it is the last step, and it can get a little weird. There's times when mastering can do more harm than good, obviously. But this whole culture of this mixed bus or shit that the educational world is pushing on people, and the plug-in salesmen and things like that. Like, man, things are just so overthought, especially on the stereo bus. And it's very easy to see the guys that are using 11 plugins on their mastering chain, versus the guys that are just kind of doing what it needs. And, a high-end guy like Ted or somebody like that is the dude that can cut through all that and say, I understand you want this volume and I can achieve that for you, but we have to get rid of the sub generator and the transformer emulation and the tape emulation and the whatever, the cherry flavored vape emulation that you're putting on the stereo bus. Like, it's just ridiculous. Yeah. Like, and it's a culture that's driven by people that don't want to listen. They just want like a easy fix. And it's just not, like, it's easier than ever to make a good sounding record, but it's just as hard, if not harder than ever, to make a truly amazing sounding album. And because there's no way around the details.
Yeah. Period. So there's also the trend. So you have metal bands come in and there's a trend. And there has been, this is not a new trend. This trend has always been around, but signature series gear, artists lending their names to amps, and so all these things. You have been associated with a number of software companies, And I'm going to speak to the crowd for a second. So hold on. So I can tell you firsthand from working with Mark and having that privilege that in our industry, on our side of the industry, he is just as renowned as someone you want to work with as he is in his side of the industry as someone you want to work with. You don't really get to work with or find someone as genuine, honest, and completely and thoroughly wonderful as Mark. You just don't. So to all the other software, hardware, any other manufacturer watching this within the sound of my voice, if you have the opportunity to work with Mark and you don't, you're what we call a moron. Just do it and you'll be thankful. I'm going to go back to Mark now. So,
thank you for that.
Well, you're welcome. You're the joy to work with. And I wonder, my question is, it's kind of twofold, because a lot of what you do is not a lot, most of what you're known for is in the metal and rock world, which is guitar heavy, and you are a guitar player. Have you ever had amp manufacturers or guitar manufacturers come to you and try and do the Mark Lewis signature series, this or that, and you've either thought it was or wasn't a good idea?
Yeah, no, there is an amp sitting somewhere in the world that I'm helping design. I just have to find the time off of work to go and finish it with this brilliant person who has been gracious enough to make my ideas a reality.
That's exciting for all of us, by the way.
Yeah, it's happening. Maybe I'm jinxing it by saying it publicly, but no, I am all about that. I mean, I've done the software thing, and I do want to do more hardware, but it's harder because you have to, the hardware thing, you either have to have the brains to put it together yourself, much like software, but the software thing, there's engineers everywhere, and it's much easier to work remotely. Whereas the hardware thing, it's like, it's so hands-on, even if the guy's in freaking Kentucky, the next state up, if it's a 3 or 4 hour drive for me, where it becomes that or shipping an 80-pound amplifier back and forth.
Yeah, it gets expensive. It's complicated.
It gets expensive and it's time consuming. But yes, that's absolutely something that I want to do. I mean, but it's like, even like that 800 sitting behind me that Dan Gower did for me, that's a lot of his brains and just a little bit of my saying, hey man, I know what you do. Can you do this for me? And there's things like that all around the studio. I mean, there's other amps that I've modified. We talked about the modifying thing or whatever, and the mics and all things like that. But yeah, the hardware thing is critical for me. Because the one place I really don't skimp. I feel like I can make a record with Pro Tools plugins at this point. And to that point, I'm not saying that I haven't gotten caught up in that whirlwind either of the plugins. When I was talking about things being horseshit earlier, like I've gotten caught up in that whirlwind too, dude. Like,
sure.
And there's like almost a definable point in my career where you can hear where it's like, oh, Lewis has gone way too far down this road, and you lose yourself in I wouldn't say in your work, because you kind of lose yourself. You're chasing your tail because there's so many things going on. You have this plugin propping up this, and it's like when you have a million medicines and you're taking them all to counteract each other. And the hardware, like getting it right on the way in, is the most important part. And then like the plugins, I'll use the Pro Tools plugins or just a Metric Halo strip or something like that. Like
So are you a commit guy at the beginning? So you're a fan of committing to a sound and like, this is what we're recording. This is what it sounds like. We're not going to try and change it or alter it later as options. Like, let's get the guitar sound at the source. Let's get the drums at the source. And those are our sounds. And we go from there.
Yes, to an extent, absolutely. Like I do take a DI when I'm tracking in case we have to reamp or something happens like that. Or say we're in a time crunch and the band has to go on tour. It's like, well, you're not going to sit here with me because I will take a week on a guitar sound if I have the resources to do it. If I need to, I would rather not. But
yeah.
Yes, like the goal for me is to do the work on the way in, so I have to do less work on the way out. And yeah, I mean, there's no getting around the amount of EQing you may have to do on drums or the amount of compression you got to do on vocals. But yeah, I try to commit, like on the last Warbringer record we just did back in June, like 1176 You know, Soyuz, an incredible mic, by the way, Soyuz 017, into a 1073, or no, into a Helios, and then into the 1176, all buttons in, annihilating the fucking vocals, smashing the piss out of it. Because I know that I'm going to do that with plugins. Why not just do it with the 1176? And it sounded great. The singer loved how it felt. And I guess you could say I committed there. Am I going to commit to compression on the bass on the way in, on the bass DI? Probably not. You know, like there's certain things I need control over. But yes, it is about getting it right on the way in. It's certainly not fix it in the mix. That's always a compromise
Mm.
for me.
So now that you've been in town, have you had or do you find any other opportunities other than rock and metal starting to come your way? Or are you even concerned about that?
Yeah, oh, they are. I mean, it's just, I'm so busy with the rock and metal stuff that I haven't really dove into it. I would like to do more. I'd like to even just do more rock because, man, it's way goddamn easier. And I'm not saying that those guys aren't wizards.
No.
I respect it. It's just, there's just less things to consider, and in terms of the tempos and things like that. But yeah, it's a different business model, man. There's a lot of guys in country that are cranking out stuff. Well, just like the metal guys that have these templates, and they're mixing a couple songs a day, and that's not how I work.
No.
No.
Well, so when you are mixing, I think one of the things people would be interested in, especially with someone like you that works with you work with extreme bands, you work with all of the scope of metal, but you do work with a lot of extreme bands. How do you deal with the ear fatigue that high gain guitar tones cause, like within a mixing or tracking session? Like, obviously you're a professional, you've been doing it for a long time, so I'm sure you've got a system, but is that ever still a thing where you're like, okay, everything just sounds like mush because everything is just so high gain, so energy laden that I've got to, like you said earlier, walk away, take a break, come back? How do you balance that part of your process?
Oh yeah, I mean, I monitor pretty low. Bands get mad at me, they're like, "You got to turn it up." So I mean, I'll actually put in earplugs, But I monitor pretty low, especially when I'm mixing. I listen loud in my car because that's when I notice like little spikes in the vocals, or a spiky lead guitar or something like that. But yeah, man, just monitoring low. Also, I mean, the Genelec monitors that I work on, not even trying to be a shill for them. Like the 1 series are so not fatiguing, man. Like, I don't even know how to describe it. And to that end, like, I recently put back up my NS10s. I haven't worked on NS10s in like 15 years because I hated them.
Yeah.
But I realized that I was just working too loud on them, and they are so fatiguing, and so they will just drill your ears out, man. And, mixing low, and getting your levels right down there, and then maybe turning it up to rock out. That's the biggest thing about it. It's not, it's really what it is. And also, I mean, the compression, but I'm just not. I mean, if anybody listens to anything I do, then nobody's ever going to tell me that I'm over compressed. I know that. So it's a lot of it's just the mastering and the amount that the level that you're working at while you're working.
At any point in time in your career, were you like a console guy? Have you ever had one or considered mixing with or working with a console?
Oh yeah. Sukov and I mean, he bought an SSL 4056 E with
Wow.
the G automation in it. It was a 56 channel E with the black EQ and a little bit of brown EQ. And that's what we mixed Nocturnal on, Dahlia.
Wow.
We mixed Goth, name of that record, the Hinderers, I think. I always get them mixed up. It was the one we did for Roadrunners, the black and red cover. That was mixed on the SSL. There's a couple other things. I mixed a few things on the SSL, and yeah, man, I miss that sound every day. I love the workflow. I love everything about the sound of it. I love the lack of options. I move faster on them. I hate working on a mouse. I'm actually looking at some control surfaces. So, I will be a shill for that. So Sweetwater, Avid, SSL, get after, dude. Seriously.
Well, I'm
because
surprised.
my wrist hurt, dude.
Yeah,
seriously.
I was
And
surprised you didn't put an Origin or an S9, that like an SSL, a smaller one of those hybrid desks in your place. So I was just curious if that was
honestly, my controller is not very deep. So that was part of it. And then the other thing is too, man, you know, I didn't feel like the Origin was for me. I just saw one the other day. It looked really cool. But I want dynamics and I want filters. And that was one of the reasons I didn't go for the Origin. But
sure.
that being said, like I'm an SSL guy, dude. Like I have the Fusion, I have the Bus Plus, and I miss that VCA sound. I miss, it was part of what I figured out that I was missing from the console because people get so into the summing amps and transformers and blah blah blah, which SSL the E's didn't. The old ones did, but the later ones didn't even have transformers. I don't really. Um, but people get so I think worried about the wrong things, and I figured out that I was kind of missing the fact that I had dynamics on every channel that really had a sound and a crunch to them.
Mm,
I didn't find that summing amps were solving what I was missing. Um, and I have some like racked up SSL channels that I use on kick and snare. Like they're
sure.
actual E channels that Greg Sanchez racked up for me when he was at Rhodes Audio. But yeah, man, I missed the console. I wish there was. I mean, another thing like SSL. Like, why do you guys not have a console that's like analog, that's digitally recallable? There's got to be an answer to it. Like West Audio makes that stuff that's really cool. That like it basically is controlled via a plugin, but it's
Yeah.
analog hardware. Why isn't SSL doing that? Like there must be an answer for that because money has never been an option for them. I mean, they made $1 million consoles or $450,000-$600,000 boards.
Yeah.
What's the difference? And that's what I wonder. I mean, they are appealing more to the kind of the prosumer market, but I can't be the only guy that's ever had this idea. That's why I'm like putting it out into the ether right now.
If you're listening SSL, this right here, right here. So
I mean, or even just say, hey, this is why we don't do it. There's got to be a reason.
you've just been called out, WWE
Yeah.
style. See you in the ring, SSL. Bring your A game. So let's forget all this stuff. So you're a Nashville citizen now with your family. Let's talk about your family because I think
Sure.
how do you, and I think this is again something a lot of people in the music profession get right and struggle with, and this is a big, how do you do the work family balance? Because again, to your point, sessions can go long. I mean, it's a time is the only commodity you can't skimp on if you want something great, whether it's great performances, great. I mean, so how do you balance dad life versus heavy metal producer by day, dad at night kind of thing?
Oh, dude. I mean, first of all, like I am severely ADD, like very left-brained, um, you know, piles here, piles there, that fucking dude. Like, and I have to be in a regimen in order for me to get anything done.
Okay.
And it took me a long time to realize that. And it kind of got worse when I moved here and I wasn't, not that Jay and I didn't really work together for a decade at Audiohammer. We would share gear and we'd help each other here and there, but we weren't in the same room. But even still, just showing up to work and knowing somebody else was there, I think had me a little more focused. Whereas, here in Nashville, it's like I'm alone in my studio. I can get up whenever I want and, hopefully I don't hit traffic in the hallway, down, on the way to the studio in the morning, that type of thing. And at that point, I had to reckon with myself to be like, dude, you have to get back into a schedule to feel good. Like I have to eat right. I have to, like, I wake up at 5:20 in the morning. How unglamorous is that, dude? Like, that's not rock and roll.
Very.
But like I have to be on schedule because I'm just not that technical person that can just jump in and do anything feeling any certain way. Like I'm just like artistic, fragile little ADD guy that has to have everything right in order for me to like hit my stride. And so the long answer like I have to have a schedule and I have to communicate with my girlfriend. I have to communicate with the kids, and I have to know when I need to be a place because
Right.
otherwise I will work all day long and I will forget about everything.
Yeah.
So, like I'm a workaholic. I still work too much. And I don't even think I have a great work-life balance. I think I work too much. But at the same time, like, you take what you can get and, that's it. But that being said, yes, I am crazy about the regimen. I'm crazy about how I eat and the physical activity because it makes a big difference in how I feel on my productivity.
Huge. Yeah.
And then just really like it's great being able to work from home. Some guys don't like that. I saw an interview with Brendan O'Brien where he was talking about how he couldn't stand it. And I'm like, man, I love when my son walks in that door right there. He's like, Dad, can we, whatever. Or he comes and sits on my lap sometimes when I'm working on a mix and he'll be like, Dad, that's too loud. And I'm like, even though it's not loud at all. And, shit like that. Like I love having my family here and it creates a much better balance for me. Maybe if I had a studio in a different location, my work would I'm sure differ. Maybe I'd be more productive. I don't know. But it's a lot of work for me personally. Some guys I feel like they just um they are really good at being chameleons and I'm a picky, fragile little flower,
That's adorable as the 6'3" working out 5 days a week, just comparing himself to a flower. I mean, I think it's,
Yeah.
look, I think that's a very cool thing for you to share with everyone because again, I do think there is this weird thing that happens when you become someone like Mark Lewis. And I mean this sincerely from the outside because all we see, and we see the outside and you look like you were built from the ground up by the gods to work in metal, record like this. This is not a surprise to anyone that this is a thing you do. So to hear you talk about the fact that there's some things just like every human on the planet has where it's like, no, man, there are parts of my life that aren't ideal. I've got to wrangle things in. I'm trying to make this a priority. I mean, that's pretty,
Yeah.
everybody thinks when they get to your spot in life that everything just, oh, I made it. I'm there. And that never happens.
It's constant work. And I mean, that's one of the reasons I like working with older bands is because they're like, yeah, we're taking Sunday off, right? Or like it's, whereas the young guys are like, we're going to work for 74 days straight, right? I'm like, fuck no, dude.
Yeah.
Like,
no.
But sometimes I do. Sometimes I'm the one that's like, guys, we got to get this done. And then I burn out, and I still do it. I'm 41 years old. I'm like, here I am, like still not treating myself as good as I should. But at the same time, the pressure is there. I got to finish this on time. I got to make this good. I got to whatever. And you have to be really conscious of not losing perspective and taking care of yourself. I mean, I don't know.
It's real. It's a real struggle.
I'm not trying to turn this into a mental health thing because I mean, God, because it's that stuff is as cringe as it gets, but like this is a mentally taxing business and
dude, creative endeavors are rough on the mind for anybody involved. So I have one more question before we start winding things down, and I've been asking everybody on the podcast this question. So
sure.
Given everything you've accomplished, all the places you've been, done, the things you've seen, is there any point when you're mixing or working on something where you still or might encounter what we would call, what the industry would call it, imposter syndrome, where you're like, man, I hope they don't find out I'm not good enough, or man, I hope I can do this? Or do you doubt yourself, or is there ever a moment where you're like, man, I don't know if I'm the right guy for this job or not?
I don't, to answer the last part first, I never take jobs where I don't feel like I'm the right guy, but as far as like doubting myself, fuck yeah, dude. Are you kidding me? Like it's a hard business. And I mean, that's a thing about it. This isn't ditch digging and not taking away from the trades in that sense, but like they have a very defined skill. A 90-degree angle is a 90-degree angle, up here. Like this drywall is good drywall. This angle's right, period. And, we have to say to the bands, I feel that this is it. This is the best I can do. But I'm always looking for a band to say, no, dude, can you turn that vocal up? Or, hey, man, maybe this isn't the right snare that I know I said this, but, so yeah, absolutely. I doubt myself. I mean, dude, it's the pressure is still immense. I mean, for me, like maybe other guys answer differently, but the pressure is still immense. And as
spoiler alert, no one's answered differently. Everybody's said something very similar, which is, I think, is important for people to see. I think it's important for people to hear.
Yeah, dude. I mean, if anything, like it's getting harder. I'm more confident in myself, but as the projects get bigger and the stakes get bigger, I mean, the last Dahlia record, I mean, dude, like Trevor's gone, and that for those 5 guys, I don't know what they went through emotionally, but like the entire metal world of those guys is really like, what are these guys going to do? And then I'm doing the drums and I'm mixing, and they're very opinionated sonically. And, there's just so much to talk about because we did something a little different, and Trevor's gone. And this is just an example of things that we, kind of consider on the inside. And it was a lot, dude. It was a lot. It's like, dude, there's pressure here, and the label, there was nobody in the situation that said, this is no big deal,
Yeah.
It's like, we have to do something good.
You guys are fine. It'll be great. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. There was not at any point, of course there's times when like, oh, it's going to be okay or whatever. But, there's immense amounts of pressure, and for every project, and sometimes, you step into things with younger guys who trust you, or older guys who trust you infinitely. And they're like, take the reins. Or there's times where bands are incredibly particular, which I also like too. And, it can be really nerve-wracking, especially knowing you're working with somebody that maybe I'm working with a band that has an engineer that's or a producer that's had more success than me. That's happened. And I got to send this guy a mix who's produced platinum records, like, fuck, that's a lot, like,
absolutely.
But what can I say? Like you just do your best, and I'm always like, I'm just always open to the notes, to the suggestions. But that's the thing, to go back to what I said earlier, like I'm always asking bands, what kind of snare drums do you like? What's your kick sound you have in your head? Because I don't want that first mix to be, oh, we got to go back to the drawing board. It's like, you know what? Maybe the snare just needs to be a little fatter. You know what? Maybe we need a little bit more this on the guitars. It's not like, oh, dude, that is not what I was thinking at all. That type of thing, knock on wood, almost never happens for me anymore. And it stopped happening the minute I started asking those questions, because there was a time when I said, this is what this has to sound like this because it makes me comfortable. And that's not what you should be doing as a producer, in my opinion. Once I started asking the band how they wanted to sound, I don't send first mixes that get torn down anymore.
Nice.
It never,
so
it doesn't happen.
You just do it. Yeah. Because you're paying attention.
And then it becomes, we need to tweak this a little bit here and there. It's never like, this is just not it, So.
All right. So we're done talking about heavy metal. We've given heavy metal all of its due. You're welcome, Satan. It's all up to you now. So, favorite or one of your favorite non-rock or metal records or artists? Go.
Oh, geez. So many, dude.
Just anyone.
Aside from the typical stuff, that a lot of us audio guys gravitate towards, whether it's, Steely Dan or
those are just givens. We presume you like Steely Dan.
Like, of course, Steely Dan or, going back and, Earth, Wind and Fire, stuff like that, like obvious stuff. There was a band many, many years ago called 16 Horsepower that I was a huge fan of. The lead singer, David Eugene Edgewords, he had another band called Woven Hand, or still does. That guy's beyond brilliant to me. Love that stuff. Thin Lizzy. I mean, fuck. I mean, do we consider them metal? I mean,
that's not metal. You could, but it's not. But it's great. Yeah. It's amazing.
I mean, Phil Lynott is maybe the most prolifically great songwriter in the history of rock and roll. It's like, what, they have 12 albums? None of them suck. It wasn't like, oh, they really blew it that time. It just doesn't exist.
Well, and all those records sound great and different at the
Yeah.
same time. That's the other thing
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Favorite, or not, again, I might say favorite. I don't mean like the definitive, but some of your favorite music producers in any genre working right now, alive, currently.
My good buddy Jay Rustin, I think, does really brilliant stuff. Bob Rock, we still have him. We still have Bob Clearmountain, for God's
Yep.
sake.
Yeah.
Bob Clearmountain, dude, like, incredible, and does it all so well. Andy Wallace,
Mm.
Martin Birch, rest in peace. You know, love those guys. I mean, and then as I was coming up, Andy Sneap and Colin Richardson were the guys that were amazing to me. But Daniel Bergstrand, good friend, brilliant guy. There's so much. I mean, on the jazz side, the Rudy Van Gelder stuff is always a big argument with jazz people. I think his stuff sounded amazing. Ted Templeman, I mean, God,
you
Don
got the greatest
Landry.
hits. You know what you're talking. You got. That's quite a varied group of individuals, by the way. That's
Dude,
fantastic.
I mean, there's just so many guys, and I'm going to think of somebody that I didn't mention. I mean, I have so many people that I respect as far as the modern guys. Obviously, Sukoff. I mean, he gave me so much, and I learned so much from him. And there's just so many good guys working now. And there's a lot of questionable ones too. But dude, there's so much great stuff. And really talented guys. And as far as the past, I mean, I can give you a cool guy list. It can be another hour. We could be here.
All right. So we started the podcast, as you know. This is going to be our last question. So we started the podcast with, do you skip leg day, which you don't. Through the podcast, you've made many mentions about your physical health, like just taking care of your physical body as someone in our line of work. So if you were going to give someone in the music industry in any capacity some advice or some encouragement about taking care of their physical health, not their mental health, it's related, but just being in a good what would be the one thing you'd say, hey man, if you could kick this habit or if you could start this habit, you'll notice the difference in your physical health that will make a difference in all the other areas?
Oof.
And that's a lot for you. I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah, that is a lot. I mean,
I just pick one. I mean, there's many. I'm not saying it's the only one. I'm just saying if you could pick one right now and say, hey man, you work with a lot of musicians, you see a lot of musicians' lifestyles, you see a lot of things where it's like, as sure as an elder statesman of what you do, you're like, well, I'm not going to say anything now, but that's going to catch up with them later.
Just diet, dude. I mean, of course, I mean, I'd love to say weights, but fuck, I mean, you can go in the gym and, break your arm on the squat rack or whatever.
Yeah.
But, yeah, man, diet, dude. It's so important, and I mean, I kind of got forced into that because I have, the Eastern European stomach of, just learning really quickly about what I can and can't eat. And then it translated into, I noticed I feel different when I don't eat that,
Right.
And that's it, man.
Are you an intermittent fasting guy, or do you do 3 square meals a day kind of thing?
I do like 18 square meals a day, but no, there is times if I'm not working out in the morning, I might not eat until 10 or 11 o'clock, depending on what time I get up. But if I've worked out in the morning, I'm gonna have to eat, or everybody will die. So, but
okay, listen, I'm gonna sum it up for everyone. So just eat well. Try and eat as well as you can. It's difficult, but if you pay attention to what you put in, I guarantee you're gonna love much more what comes out. I did proof. You heard it from the giant god of metal himself. I shouldn't have to tell you these things. Your parents should have done this for you, but now Mark Lewis has had to do it for you. So technically, Mark Lewis is your daddy now. So you're welcome.
yes.
Yeah, I just did that for the internet, and they're not going to edit that out. So, Mark, you have things to do. You have a life, you have kids, you have music, and it's never lost on me. Again, I do say this a lot, and I say it to most of our guests, because very much like you, we're particular about who comes on the podcast, and we feel fortunate that any of the people we select say yes. So thank you for your time and for your contributions to the world of music. I mean, we're fans, and being so candid and sharing all the stuff with us, it's just fantastic. We're humbled. We love you more than you'll ever know, and we're grateful that we get to be a part of your universe. So thank you.
Well, dude, thank you guys. I mean, honestly, for the sake of not, promoting Toon Track on Toon Track's own podcast.
Thank you.
You guys as people are incredible. There's nobody I'd rather work with. And, I always honor that you guys have chosen. You guys did choose to work with me. It's not like I ever hit you up and said, hey, so to be at a party or something and have Bob Rock or, Glenn Rosenstein or somebody be like, I've seen your face before, it's kind of a hard thing to, hold on a second here.
Nice.
Well, it's a hard thing to quantify. Sorry, I was getting a call. I thought I had turned my phone off.
Oh, don't worry.
It's just, it's incredibly, it's such an honor for you guys to pick me and to want to work with me. And I appreciate you all as human beings, even more so than the great company that you run. So.
Oh, you're the best. All right, Mark Lewis, we're going to let you get back to it. Enjoy your day in Nashville. Have some fun. Make some more music we can all love and enjoy. And I'm sure we will be talking to you soon. I'm going to turn this way and tell everyone goodbye. And then you're free to walk about the cabin. The pilot will have taken the seatbelt light off. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here second or third, maybe for some of the stuff, but a lot of the stuff you heard first because we're cooler than everyone else, which is all we're trying to prove with this podcast. I think it's working. No, but seriously, thank you for taking time to hang out with us today. We appreciate you guys more than you'll ever know, and we're never going to tell you because that's not how corporate and personal relationships work. It's not. So have a wonderful day. We look forward to seeing you the next time we do the Sound Horizons podcast, which ironically, got it, will be a week from today. Have a wonderful day, rest of your week, and we look forward to talking to you all very soon. Bye.